All right, welcome guys. This is our first of the React series,
Yeah, trying something different out here.
the proverbial third stool leg of the four-legged stool. So
And what are we reacting to, Ian?
we're reacting to the Super Bowl 56, which
hmm
ended at 10:01 last night. So
And
this
pop
is this is as
quiz.
live as it gets for us.
What is that in Roman numerals?
Oh, put me on the spot. It ends in VI,
Yeah,
right? That's six.
LVI. Yeah,
LVI.
it's an
It doesn't
easy
quite.
one because it's all addition. There's no subtraction for this
It
next two
is.
years. Yeah,
I had to kind of relearn the ways to do that. And yes, there's the easy way, and there's the way where it gets really messy and hard.
yeah. In a
Um,
couple decades, it's gonna get really confusing.
who would have thought that the Romans and the Greek way of doing their numerals would still be with us here, but
Yeah.
only for football. For football, basically. Like you don't see it in other places in life, right?
So congratulations to Matthew Stafford and the Rams.
Yeah.
Right.
So why don't you start us off, Mark, with what your overall takes are on the game?
Overall takes, it was interesting watching the game as a mostly objective observer, right? Being from
Much as you
Michigan,
could be.
is definitely cheering for Matt Stafford, but I wasn't going to cry if he had lost. You know what I mean? So it was good. It was a good game. I mean, my prediction going in was 28-21. I think I saw a lot of predictions in the mid 20s, most
The
favoring the
20s, which is
Rams, and it
quite
mostly
prescient.
delivered on that. We had a couple big plays, a couple blown plays, offense, defense, a special teams mishap. Um, it wasn't. I thought it was honestly overall. It was a good game. It was competitive. It was close, right? That's always the knock on Super Bowl games. It's like 40-20.
Yes, that's
So
the knock. Yep.
overall, I enjoyed the game. What about you?
Yeah, definitely. I want to reiterate the point that it was a close competitive game.
Yeah,
We have not seen that. This was a phenomenal season in terms of like the last 7 games.
postseason. Yeah,
You couldn't have scripted any better. I think the better team won. Sometimes you can't say that. Um, I think at the end of the day, what really came to light for me was that the Bengals offensive line just didn't give Burrows enough time for him to make the best choices. And at the end of the day, that gave the Rams enough wiggle room to seize the win. But definitely, I mean, for a while there, I thought it would be a big Rams win, and then things always tighten up. It's things start
yeah.
out loosey, and then everything just the field gets smaller, players get smarter, there's adjustments made, and then it's a whole new ball game, right?
hmm
So yeah, definitely. I also had the Rams winning. I think I had a 21-17 sort of scoreline. So I guess I was close-ish in the terms of overall points scored. But
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, go ahead.
So I mean, where we want to take it?
Well, basically, let's kind of walk through early on, first, second quarters. I think the
So
Rams
first
offense
quarter, the
was
feeling was the Rams were chugging away. They were kind of doing what they wanted to.
they had
You
two
know.
viable options with
hmm
Beckham and Cup.
Yes,
They
and
were
that
able to use
was
that to their advantage.
very clear. When Beckham went down, mid second quarter there, that definitely changed things. I think I have a stat here.
The
Uh,
aftermath was
yeah.
huge,
So in the first half, Stafford was 10 of 12 for 140 yards with two
essentially
touchdowns
perfect. Yeah,
with Beckham in the game. Once Beckham went out, he was 2 for 6 for 25 in the interception.
right, right. I
So
mean,
having
obviously, some of that
a
is
legitimate
mental.
second option definitely
Yep.
pays dividends.
Yeah, I mean, some of that's mental, but also having that outlet where you have a guy that can catch the ball and you have a good relationship with. Losing that, I mean, it changes how he dropped back on every pass after that, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, obviously the Rams had a really impressive first couple drives. They looked like they were able to throw the ball downfield with ease. Um,
It was
but then
interesting.
Beckham goes down.
Yeah. And then when they missed the extra point, we kind of like, oh, scribble that down.
Yes,
This could
write
be
that down, circle it, dot it
a
with a T.
big
I mean,
a big deal.
especially in light of the fact that all these postseason games were single drive possession wins.
Yep.
Basically, just the guy botched it. I mean, it looked like a clean snap, just dropped the ball, and then I thought to myself, hey, maybe this is going to be the deciding factor in the game. Obviously, it wasn't a 1 point victory, but
It still mattered because it was like that decision tree in the fourth quarter of are they playing
everything
for
hinged
field
off
goals or are they
right
playing for touchdowns? So it's
2 point
still
conversion.
yeah,
Yes. Basically, I mean, points are at a premium. You want to make sure that you can maximize your chance to win, and
yeah.
having a single point plus or minus changes what you physically do in terms of Do you go over touchdown? Do you for a field goal? So that's an excellent point, Mark.
Well, the bigger impact actually was, we're not going to get into the sports betting world, but I think the money line was like 3.5, 4, 4-ish, depending on where you got in.
Is a proverbial tough call because it's that field goal plus a half.
That impacted some people, I think, certainly.
Yeah, definitely. So let's see what else we got here. So basically, halftime score is what? At halftime it was,
oh God, on the spot, 13-10 is what it was.
I think something like that. Yeah. And then I mean, basically,
do you agree with the MVP?
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree with the MVP because most valuable player, it was clear on the offensive side of the ball that the Rams were going to win or lose on the back of could Kupp get the ball at the right time. Obviously, the guy can catch anything.
It's often the quarterback, but it's nice to see a non-QB.
Right. I mean, he earned the Triple Crown during the regular season, which is the proverbial receiving highest honors you can get: yards, touchdowns, completions, catches, rather.
Yeah.
I mean, was he the most valuable player on the offensive side of the ball? Yes, I think without a doubt.
Apparently, he's the first receiver to win it since Edelman too. It's something I read.
It doesn't happen very often. It's almost always the quarterback. Yeah. I think what kind of hurt Stafford, which after reading some more articles this morning, I think I was too harsh initially, was his 2 interceptions.
Well, one was not his fault at all.
One was not his fault,
and the other was kind of
right.
A safe risk, if I can call it that.
Yeah, basically one of them was essentially a punt. It basically gave the Bengals the ball where they would have gotten the ball if they
right, because they were throwing it from
a
little closer to the midfield. So
I mean,
you prefer to see a touchdown there than an interception.
Right, stats matter. 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions versus 3 and 1. I mean, I think honestly, the fact that last drive, it was so clear that Stafford was only going to be looking at Kupp, and Kupp still somehow made the catches. He got that one catch and got knocked. I mean, he got just.
Well, I think
on the ball. I mean, he drew the penalty for that. I mean, that was massive.
Kupp had the play of the game, as far as I'm concerned. That late drive in the fourth quarter, 4th and 1, when because the Rams couldn't run for nothing. We'll get to that, but Kupp,
1.9 yards a carry.
He had that end around 4th and 1 and picked up the first down. And to me, that was the play of the game. And he was
the most impressive run and catch, which is, I mean, it's crazy one person to have that both.
Yeah. So LA ran for 43 yards on 23 carries. It's 1.9 per. But honestly, Kupp had one of those for 7. Stafford had 3 of those carries for 6 yards. So Cam Akers, like the main,
he had a yard a carry.
1.6.
I mean, you could fall and get a yard. So, I mean, basically.
Well, they couldn't. And when they fell, they didn't get a yard.
That's true. But this time it didn't work. But I mean, essentially, this morning I was listening to a couple of podcasts, and they said that this is the second time that a McVay-led Super Bowl team, they lost to the Patriots 13-3.
Mm-hmm.
They had almost no offense. The narrative was that he is still under the delusion that the Rams are a running team. And so he just keeps trying to force the issue.
And I mean, I honestly complained to you the whole game about every run was just this
every run,
gut.
Mark, like terrible choice. Nothing's going to happen. I mean, just up the gut, and like the gut there was nothing there. There was no holes. Like no running back is good enough to force his way through 4 people.
I mean, the Rams have a good line. They kept Stafford safe. You know what I mean? But
yeah,
keeping a QB safe versus making a hole for the running back is different. Right?
I mean, I have a note right here. Basically, Rams average 1.9 yards per carry. This really helped the Bengals stay alive because they knew they were going to have to pass on 3rd and 7 all the time.
Yep.
And Stafford couldn't make all those throws.
No, because there's basically one option for half the game, right?
I do think that overall, though, I guess the case for Stafford to the MVP would have been that he had some really amazing throws that only a few quarterbacks could have made.
Clearly, he was always a Super Bowl caliber quarterback. I don't think anybody ever really doubted that.
They tried to doubt it here and there, but then like smarter voices would basically silence them, saying no.
He had the skills, he had the talent.
So. He has the arm. You had mentioned that he sort of carries this proverbial gunslinger sort of mentality,
kind of like a Brett Favre, right?
Where he makes some big throws, but some big bad decisions, and maybe tries to force it sometimes. But I mean,
decision making was fine. I think for him last night, I think he made the right throws,
especially because he went into that game thinking he'd have 2 of the best receivers in the league as 2 options, and then Odell goes down on what's called it was a no contact injury, but I feel
what it was that dang turf toe, right? Listen to our
toe. It's
other pod we just released. We talked about synthetic surfaces, and there it happened.
So check out our episode 10 if that makes no sense to you.
You know what else ended up happening that we talked about a lot, but because the Rams one didn't matter, was McVay's use of timeouts. Because they
You had mentioned that he's
blew
been criticized
one or
for,
two early in the first half where they didn't need to happen. And then they
yeah.
ran out of time at the end of the first half where I thought they could have made a drive at least for a field goal. You know what I mean?
I mean, I think that if I'm thinking about timeouts and time, if you don't have two timeouts and when you have a minute left in the clock, if you have just one timeout with a minute left, you have no timeouts. Basically, you need two timeouts to use basically within the last 2 minutes to make it count. And
One
he
of
at the
them
end of the first
isn't for
half had
decision
one.
making because the one timeout's always going to be for, oh, you make the long throw, you got to run down there and timeout to get your field goal
Right.
team on the whatever, right? So
Yeah, basically he did. I think that for the first half, they basically didn't have any good management on timeouts, and it didn't really hurt them exactly, but it kind of set up some foreboding foreshadowing of like, if the game's down to the final minute, is McVay's timeout usage going to come back to haunt him, basically? So that was kind of one of the narratives stewing.
You know what I really enjoyed about the game, at least the first
What's that?
50 minutes of it, was the lack of penalties, the lack of flags. It was a really clean game.
It was smooth. I mean,
The
yes, I
only
think that there was a huge gaffe though. If we want to talk about missed calls,
blown call, definitely 100%.
blown call,
except for Cincy, but everybody else would agree.
So Jalen Ramsey, who's Chris Collinsworth and Al Michaels all night were saying best cornerback, best cover guy in the league. You know, he seemingly just in real time, it seems like he kind of falls.
Yeah.
And then there's a 75-yard completion, which was the longest he gave up in his career, I think was the stat.
And that was the opening play of the second half, right?
It was like, yeah, it was like within the first 8 seconds. And on review, obviously there's a pretty
face mask
thing, which is that why he fell over? Was he sort of embellishing it? Who knows? But he lost best balance. He fell.
Yeah.
And it opened the game up, and
it definitely made it a little tense.
Momentum. If we're going to talk about momentum,
because we have Beckham go down, we have Stafford interception, we have that touchdown, and then the next play from Stafford is another off the hands
essentially
interception.
The Bengals have their first lead at that point.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the beginning of the third quarter of the Rams' misfortune, where the third quarter, the Rams just weren't able to do much of anything.
The third quarter, I don't know if both offenses got tired, if they got conservative with their play calling, but it was definitely more pressure. The defenses were more apparent in the third quarter. We got more tackles for losses. We got more QB sacks.
Maybe the halftime spiel by both coaches and the readjustments.
Yeah.
It played differently. It wasn't as enjoyable probably as
well, you missed
quarter was. But
you missed part of the third quarter.
I missed a little bit.
Costco
came back to haunt me a little bit, but I mean,
basically, you didn't miss much. I gave you the play calls. So.
No, I didn't miss too much, and without the flags, I think it was a pretty smooth, quick quarter compared to the slog that.
Did you see the stat that came out mid-game? They said it was the most, or tied for the most sacks a quarterback had received. Joe Burrow said he received 7, which is tied for Staubach back in
which was like the 60s,
80s?
something, 80s. One of the decades previous to this recording. So basically,
so
I have in my notes here.
Hit. That's when Von Miller and Aaron Donald, I mean, they really started stepping up, and their names were every other play.
One of the two of them basically got to the quarterback. So yeah, basically, I have here in my notes that the Bengals offensive line, they didn't play well enough to give Burrows the chance to make the best possible play.
I mean, we heard Chris Collinsworth say 2 seconds,
2
seconds, a bunch, right?
Yeah, I was listening to a podcast, and they said two things that stood out. They said that Burrows released the ball at 2.4 seconds on average, which was his second fastest ever. I know, small career, so small sample size.
Yeah.
And then the Bengals offensive line had a 14% win block pass rate.
Say that again.
Which means only 14% of the time did the Bengals offensive line essentially win a battle.
I assume you want it to be 50 usually.
Yeah, so 14 is the lowest, I think, of the of basically like the modern era. So Burrows had 2 seconds to get rid of the ball, and when he didn't, he got sacked. And when he did get rid of the ball, sometimes, obviously, if he had that additional second, somebody would have gotten open, and the game would have been completely different. So I know that we talk about the offense a ton because the offense is the fireworks and the boom and the bang. But I mean, the Bengals offensive line didn't put them in a position where they could be as successful as obviously the talent was around them.
Speaking of exciting offense, a couple trick plays from both sides, right? That was kind of fun to watch. One effective.
They seem to both try the same play.
Yeah, the Bengals, it worked.
I mean,
the Rams didn't. Cup. So
Slight
for all his MVP
variations.
accolades, he rushed his throw to
His
Stafford.
throw was
there.
fine. He thought he had
It's like
like
a
2 steps
like
additional,
a
and
jump
he didn't.
basketball.
Right.
Yeah,
I
that
think it's
was
interesting to see those,
cute. I
but
guess. Yeah, they always feel so risky, don't they? To the
well, because
having a non QB throw
do
it.
something
Yeah,
that they don't do often. And then you have a quarterback catching the ball, which obviously they can catch the ball. I mean, they're good athletes, but they don't do it every game. I mean, it's
no. And
kind of out of their comfort
if you
zone.
watched the Pro Bowl like skills contest, you can see the difference in a athlete throwing the football, a football athlete throwing the football versus a QB throwing the football. Honestly, it's like night and day. Like,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
there's a reason the QBs make so much money. Like, and there's only 10 of them in the world who can, excel. Like,
Basically, yeah. So we talked about MVP a little bit. I want to ask you an interesting question. So Cup gets the MVP,
Yep.
but then Aaron Donald is the name that at least Chris Collinsworth says probably every 3 sentences. He says he's the best player playing in the NFL. Should we have MVP for the offense and an MVP for the defense?
I mean, I don't know. That's too much like everybody gets a participation ribbon kind of thing.
Well, I guess 2 people would, but yeah.
No,
Twice as many would get it.
No. I mean, it's just the nature of football. How many touches you have on the ball and the impact of the play. It's going to narrow that field to be most likely a quarterback followed by an offensive player. It's one of the faults of the game, I suppose. But
yeah, I mean, in terms of actually,
I wouldn't hand out. I mean, they already get like offensive defensive player of the year. Is that enough?
Yeah, I mean, I think having one MVP, it will never change. I mean, that
how
makes
about
sense,
how about this? How about we even get rid of? Why do we need a Super Bowl MVP? We don't have MVPs for every other single game.
Every other
Why do we
single
need it for
game,
that
no.
game? I think
That
for the
is true.
season makes sense. And then it's like, oh, the final game we have to have one too. I mean, all the sports do it, but
And then like heaven forbid someone on the losing team just plays out of their mind, they're not going to get the MVP. So you have to win the game too.
yeah,
So
I mean, across the spectrum of
half the team,
sports,
only half people are eligible.
that's happened throughout like series, right? Once or twice, basketball.
Because in terms of actually sealing the deal,
Mhm.
Cup gets a touchdown, Rams are up. But when the game's in the line, the Bengals have the ball,
and Donald sealed the deal,
right?
with
So
the
I mean,
sack and yeah,
the penultimate play, the game ending play, series drive. I mean, it's Aaron Donald just basically a force of nature, pressuring that entire line, making Von Miller sometimes be more available. And I mean, basically,
he was double, triple teamed the whole time, right?
The crucial pressure that Donald put on Burrows was basically omnipresent. I mean, if it wasn't on one play, by the next play it was there. I mean, it was phenomenal.
So was Burrows, was he a little injured there that last drive or two? Is that what we kind of read?
Yeah. So basically,
limp a little bit.
I don't have the exact fourth quarter, time it happened, but in the fourth quarter, Burrows definitely goes down. You can see him grimacing a little bit. They pan the camera pretty quickly, but obviously shaken up.
Had they won the game though, is that even noteworthy?
Probably not. I mean,
Stafford also went down once or twice, right, with a twisted ankle and stuff.
He went he was on on the medical bench thing, getting who knows what. But yeah, so I mean, who knows if Burrows was playing at 100% that fourth quarter? I mean,
probably
they
not.
Didn't take
None
him out.
of them are.
They didn't take him out for anything like that. So I mean, I'm sure we'll hear more about that as the days goes on.
Yeah.
As we speak, there are articles from all the publications just coming down, doing different takes, different vantage points. It really wasn't a huge storyline in like the first articles to come out because they were all Rams focused and
right.
But
we didn't touch on who's the Rams lineman? Whitworth, is that his name?
What's that?
Whitworth?
Yeah. 40-year-old Whitworth looks maybe like he's 45 almost.
I mean, why can't he win MVP?
I mean, in terms of like the culmination totality of like sportsmen on and off the field and I mean stuff like I mean he's good enough to play at 40 on the best team, that won the Super Bowl. I mean, sure, you can make any argument. I mean, you can make an argument for that being like the ultimate feel good story.
Did he retire? You said a bunch of people were retiring after the game.
Yeah, so like basically it was retirement gate at the end of the game. There was like all of a sudden like 3 or 4 people who maybe previously they didn't mention. McVay even there was thoughts where he was like, I got my Super Bowl, maybe I'll become a broadcaster, take some time off.
I
Apparently,
mean,
he's like had a wedding canceled 3 times in a row because of pandemics and
I think it makes
postseason
sense.
success.
You win at the highest
So
level, you got your paycheck, and then you can just go back and like
yeah.
be with your family. Because I mean, the players spend a lot of time in football, but the coaches spend their entire lives.
Well, they basically are on.
like,
They're basically working the entire 6-month season, 8th-month season
yes,
for these guys. So
yes,
yes, they're paid well. We can talk about
oh
all the
sure,
intangibles. Free food, free travel, cool clothing. But I mean, it's a lot of work still. Then yeah,
not
so
a
Aaron,
health, not healthy, yeah.
Aaron Donald, 30. I think he's 30 years old. We can fact check that, but I believe that's correct. A lot of wear and tear in the body, having to hold that kind of muscle and mass. It's probably not the healthiest thing. He's achieved the highest levels of the sport. There was discussion that he would retire. I think that Michelle Tafoy even asked him.
He's 30, yeah.
He's 30, so good. His third question after how do you feel, blah blah blah, was are you going to retire? And he did the right like pivot point where he was like, I'm just going to celebrate this, enjoy the moment.
Weren't we complaining when they're going into halftime? Let's stop asking any of them any questions. Just
why
let
do
them
we
go
even
off
have
the field.
why do we even have that as a position? I mean,
the on-field
no
reporter.
one's ever revealed anything of note or of substance. And
even the post-game stuff, I don't like it.
like rookies that first week of like tryouts or whatever are basically pulled aside and taught how to answer questions by like the PR people.
Yeah,
like they're like no one is
non-speak.
There's no loose cannons. I mean, occasionally someone's something crazy, but usually it's not even about football. It's like about, there was one guy that made fun of like Louisiana food on like a press conference. And that was the big story, but like, that's fine. That's not about the football. Who cares?
It's got to be rough.
He's not giving away anything.
Especially for like, I know it's not the sport, basketball players who play so many more games and stuff. They got to constantly answer those questions.
82 times or something.
Goodness.
Yeah. So what have we not talked about? I mean, basically MVP,
yeah,
back and forth. I mean, how many lead changes were there? There was 3 or 4 lead changes.
Yeah, almost every other score, especially in the second half. Yeah, so that's fun. We did make the decision we're not touching on commercials, right? Or halftime show. Get that somewhere else. Stadium was beautiful, but
it looked warm.
Yes,
warmer than it was in Michigan. I'm just scrolling in my notes here.
Yeah.
So for me, I guess, we talked about this, but good teams capitalize on opportunities. I think one of the more underrated swings of momentum came on the Bengals' second possession of the second half. They basically took a huge lead on that missed call, that huge touchdown pass. And then Stafford threw the interception, which gave Cincinnati the ball back basically at half field. And they had momentum and they were driving, but they had a 4+ minute drive, but they only traveled 11 yards. And so basically they got the field goal. But I was reading about the fact that if they had been able to get another touchdown right there, back-to-back scores, pretty demoralizing. What could have happened? But
yeah,
either the Rams defense stepped up, or the narrative could be the Bengals kind of squandered an opportunity to really capitalize on field position. So
how long was that Rams drive as the other side of the coin? Like 15 plays, right? Later in the game or after that?
Yeah, that was a long sustained drive, which we hadn't really had that much.
Nope.
Mostly because neither team really ran the ball very effectively. So when you're forced to throw that much, you're going to miss some of those throws, and then it's 3rd and 7, and it's like, oh crap.
I think the game was good. It was close. If you look at the totality of kind of the, oh no, bad luck, random events, most of them I think kind of went against the Rams, right? The early injury to Odell, the kind of
missed call, right?
The missed call for Mixon to score, the interception, the second one released from Stafford, those all kind of went against the Rams, and yet they weren't like egregious, but they were all, bad luck.
I was
still pulled it out because the game.
It could have been a blowout.
It could have been 35-17.
Yes.
It could have been, honestly,
which would have been a completely different end. I mean, in terms of like the points scored. I think I read something, and I don't know how they calculated this, but basically the Rams gave the Bengals like 9 extra points based on possession and yards. So essentially the Bengals got an additional 9 points. I mean, obviously it's kind of a weird stat, but basically the game.
You said something during the game. We were watching that, and you asked me that question. You said, "Okay, interceptions and missed call, is that a 14-point swing?" And I said, "No, I think it's 8.5 because I split the difference between 7 and 4."
If you do 8.5-point swing, like that's the plus and minus of that is quite large. It changes the entire landscape of the game. So
yeah.
And this game was basically a field goal difference at the end. So I'm trying to see if we
Yeah.
there's
Any
anything
final
else.
thoughts?
I mean, I guess, and for the second time in as many seasons, the home team wins the Super Bowl.
So awkward.
It's awkward. I mean,
The Rams were the away team, right?
the NFL has made the choice to, I think, smartly play the game in the warm weather environments. So I mean,
Yeah.
half the league is kind of out.
I
But,
assume in the next 20, 30 years, every new stadium up north that gets built, though, is going to be built to host a Super Bowl, right? With closed interiors.
I mean, within 5 years, I think SoFi will host again, probably. I mean, it's like the premier stadium. It's in a good location. It's profitable as heck. I mean, the prices and things like that. And I mean, it was a cash cow. But yeah, I mean, basically, Mark, would you have any, do you want to give the fans any final thoughts?
In terms of Super Bowl games, it was a good game. It did not disappoint, which is an insult to Super Bowl games, I guess, because you're usually expecting them to disappoint. But no, it was a good game.
What was a good game?
Yeah. Predictions for next year? What do you got?
Oh man, early predictions. Well, one of these years the Chiefs
the
Chiefs are going to break
Bengals.
through,
Yeah.
but not sure. Who knows? Maybe it'll be the home team will be playing in the Super Bowl again.
Yeah.
And maybe the Gatorade will be purple this time finally instead of
it was blue for the record.
blue.
Yeah.
Anyway, this was our first let's get into it React series. You'll see more of these, and yeah, this has been fun. Thank you.
This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. The content in this podcast is not intended to be a research report, financial, or life advice, and does not constitute an endorsement of any product, service, individual, or organization.